Hey guys, this is Rusty, and today I'm going to show you my 50 building hacks and tricks that can improve your builds. The first one up on my list is this medieval royal carriage, the tutorial for which is linked in the description of this video. You can add this build to your medieval city, or pretty much anywhere on the road, as the royal family might be just traveling somewhere. My next tip for you would be to occasionally add some walls out of stone materials next to your roads. This will really make it feel as someone lives nearby the road, and you can even add some lanterns to emphasize that feeling. Next up on my list is whenever you have a water area in your world, like a pond, a river or a sea, you can add some boats if there's a settlement nearby, as some of its inhabitants might sometimes go fishing. You can again find the tutorial for the boat you're looking at linked in the description below. Also, if you have a lake or a pond in your world, you can add some simple cattails to it out of some green stained glass paints with sea pickles on top of them to make the place look a bit more overgrown. If you are able to, build some custom trees in your world wherever you can, as they add just so much details to your builds. My next tip would be to add a story to your build. Like I have here, for example, this flipped cart which might have bumped into something on its way, or maybe it was even ambushed by some bandits. And as you can see in my example, you can also use some stationary mobs, if you have the access to commands, to further emphasize the story. You can again find the tutorial for this build, linked in the description. And if you want to know how to summon these stationary mobs into your world, leave a comment down below that you do, and maybe I will make a tutorial on this topic in the future. You can also add these small rocks into your world, if you want the feeling of a very rocky environment. You can use some walls while doing this, or even some stone buttons to represent those tiny pebbles around a big rock. My next small build is this harbor crane that will definitely fit into your medieval docks as a way of transporting goods onto the ships. If you want to know how to build this one, again, check out the description below. Whenever you have a place in your world where goods would need to be stored, you can easily just build some of these pallets out of unlit campfires and spruce signs to store these items. Whenever you have a barrel or a composter, you can also add an item frame with an item in it to further support the idea of something actually being stored inside the barrel. You can make some almost empty barrels or crates of grain by placing some hay bales facing up into the floor and surrounding them with spruce trapdoors. The next build on my list is this very detailed lamp, which has a lot of interesting shapes, but at quite a high cost because it uses hoppers and an anvil to achieve those shapes. You can again find the link to the tutorial for this one down below. My next tip is, whenever you have a road that is made out of stone, use some stairs, slabs, buttons and even pressure plates to add some depth to the road, to remove the flatness that honestly doesn't look that great. My next build is a bit of a Halloweeny one, but it is to build some of these custom carved pumpkins next to your house to get the best out of that Halloween spooky atmosphere. You can again find the link to how to build this one in the description. My tip number 15 is to often build some bushes just out of some leaves next to your builds to fill in the empty spaces. If you're building a graveyard in your world, you might not want to forget to also build a mausoleum in there, as some very important people might have died and been buried there. And if you like the one you see in front of you, definitely check out my links. Here are also some of my small tombstone designs made out of stone bricks and polished andesite. The first of my designs is this very big cross-shaped one. It's up to you if you want to build the grave itself out of some slabs or soul sand in all of these designs. The second one is kind of a smaller version. You can also replace some of the blocks with their mossy variants to make them look more weathered. And the last design I have is just a regular tombstone. My next tip is, if you want to achieve a very spooky atmosphere, definitely don't forget to build some of these dead trees, as they will really help you to emphasize that. Have you ever found yourself thinking that normal pumpkins are too big? Don't worry, you can easily replace them with these armor stands with pumpkins on their heads. If you're struggling to figure out how to do this, the link in the description should definitely help you. The next thing on my list is, whenever you have an abandoned house or a build, you can easily symbolize it by barring some of its windows using signs, but make sure that you break the symmetry of this a bit to really give it that neglected feeling. My next tip is, whenever you're using wood in your builds, to consider also using some trapdoors or pressure plates to get some extra depth and detail into the build. Whenever you have a building in your world with windows, but you're too lazy to build an interior for the building, you can just place some black concrete either one block from the glass or right next to it to make it seem as if it is just quite dark inside. The next thing on my list is this very effective and detailed medieval market stall, which will definitely fit your marketplace, and the tutorial for which you can find in the description below. A great way to add life to your Minecraft city or a village would be to make it seem as if a festival is just being celebrated there. You can easily make this by building these stripes of different colors of wool throughout your streets. Next up on my list is this awesome looking wheelbarrow design, which is made out of a grindstone, an almost filled composter and an open spruce fence gate. If you want, you can also add some signs on the other sides of the composter. My tip number 26 applies to building interiors to your builds, and it is simply to replace the default Minecraft beds with some custom ones, as that gives you so much more freedom in the way you want your bed to look like. As always, you can find the link to the tutorial for this exact bed in the description below. My next tip is, whenever you're building a bookshelf, replace some of the bookshelf blocks with looms that are placed sideways, because their side texture really looks as an empty bookshelf. If you're building a wardrobe in your interior, you can use some armor stands to make the clothes inside of it. The one I have here was made using command blocks, but you can also make some very impressive looking ones without the use of commands. When you want to build a plant in a flower pot, this is definitely a design I would recommend you, because the dead bush inside the flower pot makes it look as if the plant itself had a lot of branches. Next up on my list is this chandelier design made out of spruce fences and lanterns, which has a big advantage of looking great for the space it takes up. My next tip is building a well near your building, because every human being needs water for their survival, and this small detail makes it really look as if someone is truly living in there. The next thing is this simple rose bush made out of some 2-block high rose bushes, some leaves and some green carpet. You can even put this inside a wooden flower bed by surrounding it with spruce trapdoors. Next up is another lamppost design, this one being quite cheaper than the last one, because it only consists out of some polished andesite, wood buttons, stone brick walls and lanterns. My next tip is, whenever you're building a bush out of some leaves, try adding in some green carpets to make it look much more detailed. the next build on my list is this awesome looking tent, which looks quite incredible when built, for example, in a forest. You can again find a tutorial for this one in the description below. My next tip is adding some small stones around your campfire to form a circle. The stones themselves are in fact just skeleton skulls placed on some armor stands, standing on 3 layers of snow. My next tip is, whenever you have a pile of wood somewhere, place some unlit campfires onto it and around it, to make the smaller logs of the pile. When it comes to building custom trees, you can easily make some smaller ones by using some fences instead of the full blocks. And when you have some bushes in the wild, you can also place some sweet berry bushes next to or even inside the bush itself for extra shape and detail. My next small build on this list is this awesome looking car that can transport whatever you want. If you want to know how to build this one, check out the link in the description below. My next tip is, whenever you're building a stone wall outside, replace some of the blocks with their mossy variants and add some leaves or even berry bushes to make it overgrown. My next tip is, whenever you have a wall next to a farmland, replace the dirt blocks under the wall with another block. It's a very small detail, but it really shows that you care about your builds. Also place some piles next to your fields, as some of the crops might have just been harvested and need to be stored somewhere. My next small build is this water fountain that heavily takes advantage of the waterlogging mechanics. You can again find a tutorial for this one down below. My next tip is to add some flower fields next to your builds to add that extra bit of color. You can do this in multiple ways, by just spamming them, but I would recommend leaving some of the blocks empty, or by placing them in some kind of a shape. I chose some angled lines in this example. You can of course use any flower variant. My next tip is mainly for those of you who have random ticks turned off in your world, and it is when you use leaves in your builds. Place some vines on some of the leaves to add a bit of texture variation. My next build is this awesome stone bridge to cross any of your rivers. I guess you know where to find a tutorial for this one. My tip number 48 is to really emulate the real world by building some of your custom trees as fallen over, as there might have been some rough winds that have broken the tree. My next tip is to sometimes build these big piles of logs, maybe next to your forest. Do this by just placing some logs, then running rails over them. I also like to replace the logs under the rails with barrels, and you might also add some unlit campfires for those extra small logs. And my last building trick for this video is using some invisible armor stands in your builds to add those floating items wherever you want. If you want to see a tutorial how to do this, definitely let me know in the comments. And that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, definitely leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and see you next time.